As we step into this time of experiencing the infinite presence in meditation, I invite you to let your body settle gently. You may feel a need to shift. Exhale deeply. I invite you to let your body settle, sensing the places where you are resting, touching, wherever you are seated, here in this space or at home. And you may like to let your palms open on your lap in a expression of receiving. Or maybe your hands feel better touching your heart, resting, grounding you as you lay them on your lap. Sense what your body and spirit need in this moment. As we begin by filling first our own hearts with loving kindness. May I be filled with loving kindness. May I be free from suffering, and may I be well. May I be at peace and joyful. And sensing that infinite presence filling us, we hold now in a circle of light and love all of those we love. Sharing with them, may you be filled with loving kindness. May you be free from suffering, and may you be well. May you be filled with peace and joy. In an expanding awareness of that infinite presence, we include now those who may have forgotten they are made of the divine essence, that they are expressions of God. And as we feel our containers fill, expanding to those we love, we expand that now out to those we find it challenging to love. May you be filled with loving kindness. May you be free from suffering, and may you be well. May you live in peace and joy. Sensing now that infinite presence touching, holding, filling all that is. We send this now to our Mother, the Earth, to all creatures in it, to all beings everywhere, in the ever-expanding infinite cosmos. May all be filled with loving kindness. Be free from suffering. Be well. May all beings everywhere live in peace with joy. Aware of the infinite presence that holds us all. And so it is. Amen. Thank you. 2 weeks ago, before I got to be on vacation, looking at every mountain, every ocean, and being filled with that infinite presence and that tangible gift of being in awe in nature, I was inspired by the book, The Many Faces of Prayer. It's a Unity author, Tom Shepard. He writes a column in the Unity magazine that is now Spirituality and Health. And I also explored that night, that morning, what the word God has meant to me in the course of my life and what it means to me now. And I found myself, as I was doing my deep dive into kind of fleshing out that talk for that Sunday, drawn to a website that our friend Heather Didell actually shared with me quite a while ago, the Integral Christian Network. And the 3 faces of God, as described by Paul R. Smith. Raj, really, thank you for this is a photo from the Hubble telescope. So here we are with this tiny little word, 3 letters, God. And that little tiny word carries so much, right? I know for me it carries the weight of the images I grew up with. It carries cultural assumptions of what it means in our Western culture to say that word, different potentially from my Hindu brothers and sisters, Muslim brothers and sisters, although there's connection. It holds wonder. doubt, confusion, joy, awe, maybe even some anger. So my conversation over the next couple of weeks is going to be between the many faces of prayer and the many faces of God. So I invite you along on what feels like a really deep conversation. It has been very fruitful for me, and I ended up pulling out about, 5, 6, 7 books that I've read a little bit of this, and so I made myself focus on just a couple of things for today. So today we're going to explore God beyond us and how that face of the mystery could inspire us in a practice of awe. Next week, I'll explore the face of God beside us that invites us to consider the practice of relationship. And then on the 29th, I'll explore the face of God being us and how that helps us practice the embodiment of God. So throughout these weeks, I hope that you'll find ways to question, that I have found ways to question some of those long-held beliefs that I had, some of the new ways that I've come to see my spirituality and my journey. I hope that you will come along for the ride, that homework, that reminder that I always need to have some practice that hems my days. And so I hope that you will come along with me to explore, to question, to wonder what it means to have a spiritual practice, what it means to say this is who I am as an individual expression here in this community, and what it means to us as a community to explore who we are. One of the things I love about Unity as I've come to understand it is that it is a movement for spiritual growth, right? Most of us come to Unity from something else, from something that, for whatever reasons, didn't quite fit us anymore, and where our hearts were drawn, where our minds were drawn. And yet it is also easy to crystallize any spiritual teaching, even the openness of Unity teachings. One of the things I love about my classes with Reverend Kelly as I'm doing the education of Unity is that she will say often, question everything. So question me as well. But here is an unfolding of my own questions. So I'll start with, from the website, it'll be yet another book that I'm going to have to buy. Oh, okay, good. It really is an issue. So, the infinite face of God beyond us, a God big enough for our mind. These are the words of Paul R. Smith. Behind the God that Jesus talked about was always the awesome creator of heaven and earth. Moses was told this face of God beyond us is the I am of infinite being. Paul taught the infinite face of God is the one in whom we live and move and have our being. Something in this infinite face of God beyond us was always there in the Jewish culture of Jesus' day, even though the world was seen in a much smaller and more limited way. In today's world, Smith writes, we have the overview effect, described by astronaut Bob Beckman. So I invite you to picture this as we hear this quote from an astronaut. Picture some of those photos you've seen of the Earth hanging from space. Astronaut Bob Beckman. It is the experience of seeing firsthand the reality of the earth in space, which is immediately understood to be a tiny, fragile ball of life hanging in the void, shielded and nourished by a paper-thin atmosphere. From space, national boundaries vanish. The conflicts that divide people become less important, and the need to create a planetary society with the united will to protect this pale blue dot becomes both obvious and imperative. I meant to look up when he said that, because it wasn't yesterday. This pale blue dot and our imperative to find a way as a planet to care for each other. Smith goes on to say, at an even larger scale, I'm fascinated by the glorious images of the vast cosmos taken by the Hubble Space Telescope. When I put myself into them, I experience a little something of the overview effect while contemplating how immense, likely infinite, our universe is. Theologically, this is an objective, transpersonal, non-theistic, cosmic face of God that we reflect about. We can experience this face of God when we move into non-ordinary, transcendent state of consciousness. This is the infinite face of God beyond us. It is accessed in the spiritual knowing of our headspace, our mind. That's a lot to take in. The PDF will be on the website, and so will the link. Theologically, this God beyond us is objective. God is principle. That's familiar to us in Unity. God as principle is not a person. It's not a being. It is being itself. This is an objective, transpersonal, non-theistic, cosmic face of God that we reflect about. Yeah, there's a lot there to unpack. So in then Thomas Shepard's book, The Many Faces of Prayer, he asks some really interesting questions about what is prayer. Is prayer then, that's what I talked about a couple of weeks ago, is it communicating to something outside of us, God beyond us? Or is it reflecting on and bringing forth something within us, God being us? Yes. So holy wow. These two books have brought me to a beautiful yes and. And I'm also not going to get into the quantum physics theory of Ken Wilber that is circling both of these books. But you could go there if you want to, because again, it is, I laugh about it, and yet what is so compelling to me is how those threads, science, theology, unity, prayer, exploration, what does it mean? I don't know. I have used the word God more in my almost 3 years of being here than I had probably in the 20 years leading up to it. I cannot, without a doubt, prove what this thing we call God is all about. And yet, I have had experiences that fill me with that sense of I am looking at and part of something so immense, so cosmic, that experience, even if it is fleeting, is transformative. In the book, This Here Flesh, writer and liturgist Cole Arthur Riley describes awe as a spiritual practice. She has written this book, but she also has a beautiful Black liturgies on Instagram. It is powerful. If you are an Instagram user, you might want to find her on there. She writes, I think awe is an exercise, both a doing and a being. It is a spiritual muscle of our humanity that we can only keep from atrophying if we exercise it habitually. As someone who's not really a fan of habitual exercise, I do think I could lean into this practice of awe. Awe is not a lens through which to see the world, but our sole path to seeing. Let me say that again. Awe is not the lens we look through. It's our whole path to seeing. She writes, when I speak of wonder, I mean the practice of beholding the beautiful, beholding the majestic, the snow-capped Himalayas, the sun setting on the sea, but also the perfectly mundane, the soap bubble reflecting your kitchen, the oxidized underbelly of that stainless steel pan. More than the grand beauties of our lives, wonder, awe, is about having the presence to pay attention to the commonplace. It could be said that to find beauty in the ordinary is a deeper experience than climbing to the mountaintop. To encounter the holy in the ordinary is to find God in the liminal, the spaces where we might subconsciously exclude it. Awe, not as the way of seeing, but the path to everything we see. These flowers that are a gift from our friend Delanne inspire awe. Your faces as I look around this room and know that you are out there on the mundane miracle of technology with us inspires awe. I have a little pot of cherry tomatoes straggling along on my back deck. And as I walked out this morning, I saw the tiniest little red cherry tomato. It maybe is 1/4 of an inch in diameter. I've never seen one so tiny ripen. It inspired awe. And granted, I had that on my mind because I was coming here to share this with you. Otherwise, I might have just walked past in a hurry with my breakfast and my coffee and my bag and not seen it at all. So how are you paying attention? How are you encountering the holy? How does the face of God beyond us sit with you? Does it feel uncomfortable to think of God as a presence outside of you, too close to that kind of Santa Claus, big white bearded man in the sky? Linda Martello Whitsitt thoughtfully writes and reminds us that God is not a person. God is the one power in all and through all, life itself, love itself. The divine is the indescribable yet recognizable divine force. And yet Thomas Shepard writes that we have a personal connection with the animating force of the cosmos, that awesome, all-embracing wholeness of all things. And when we are faced with that, muttering a prayer of thanks seems perfectly logical. God beyond us. I am curious about how to reconcile in my own practices that sense with The divine force, as Linda Martella-Whitsitt talks about that. Are they the same? Is it different? Does it matter if they're the same or different? How do I see my relationship, my expression of this face of God? So I'm wondering if, as well as a little bit of homework reminder for us to pay attention to what our practices are these days, whether it's the loving kindness meditation, whether it's walking as meditation, singing as meditation, prayer in whatever form it takes for you. Are you curious? Are you willing to question some of those assumptions that we carry without being aware of them when we say that word, God? So I hope that you will join me in an experiment of practicing awe, of noticing the way a candlelight flickers, of looking at the waxing gibbous before it turns into a full moon, of looking in the mirror and seeing your own face, wrinkles, gray hair, laugh lines, and feeling awe at what you see. And then let's see where that takes us as we then experiment and explore God beside us next week. I found a poem by one of those writers that we have actually, several of us have used her before, Chellan Harkin. And I think I might have said her name wrong. Chellan. See, I knew there were a couple people in the room who pointed her writing out to me. So in that sense of the cosmic force, maybe this isn't the right poem to share because she really plays with what we have done to the word God. But I love how this complicates all of it and yet simplifies it so beautifully. So besides my call to us to experiment, to explore, to be aware and pay attention to the mystery as it unfolds in our own lives, from soap bubbles to starry skies, here is the worst thing. The worst thing we ever did was put God in the sky out of reach. Pulling the divinity from the leaf, sifting out the holy from our bones, insisting God isn't bursting dazzlement through everything we've made, a hard commitment to see as ordinary, stripping the sacred from everywhere to put in a cloud man elsewhere, prying closeness from your heart. The worst thing we ever did was take the dance and the song out of prayer, made it sit up straight and cross its legs, removed it of rejoicing, wiped clean its hip sway, its questions, its ecstatic yowl, its tears. The worst thing we ever did is pretend God isn't the easiest thing in this universe, available to every soul in every breath. So have fun exploring this week. Amen.
Yeah.